Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. With it being a brand new season here in Warzone, of course, just like in every other season, we have a new meta update, basically, right? We've seen some weapon changes. We obviously have new weapons added into the mix, and because that's something we always do at the start of every single season or anytime there's a major seasonal change, is we go ahead and we look at the top 10 best loadouts to be using for this specific season, because sometimes weapons that were great last season sort of dwindle down, they get nerfed, they get tossed out of the meta. Other weapons that were sort of lingering in the background become incredibly good. So today we are going over what I believe are the best loadouts for season 6 here. If you enjoy the video at any point, or if you find it helpful, let me know by dropping a like on it. Would be seriously appreciated. Let's aim for 3,000 likes on this one. And of course, if you're new to the channel, or if you happen to be a part of the 55% of viewers who have not already subscribed, this is the place to be for everything going on in COD. News, updates, tips, loadouts, it's all right here every single day. So feel free to subscribe with your notifications turned on. So I've got my 10 main loadouts here. As always, we'll just go through them, break down why I think this primary and this secondary work well together, why they're the best guns in the game. For what it's worth, as we go through all these different loadouts today, you'll notice I use a different primary and a different secondary on every single class. You can absolutely interchange them if you want to use primary A with secondary C and primary B with secondary A. Doesn't matter, you can go ahead and flip-flop them as much as you like, but there are a handful of really solid weapons in Warzone right now. But first and foremost, I want to go ahead and break down my two regain classes. Keep in mind, these are not my first initial loadouts. I'm only using these for very specific moments in game. If I die, when my gulag, I come back, I have to regain. These are the loadouts I'm going for if I'm looking for a sniping setup, if it's more open zone, or just like a more aggressive setup, which is going to be the first one here, featuring the Grav and the M19. You pretty much always have to have MW weapons on your regain loadout strictly for fully loaded. If you're coming back fresh out of the gulag, or you're coming back with your teammates, they just bought you back or got you off a supply run, and you guys don't have anything going, you're gonna need ammo, and fully loaded has got you covered there. For the Grav setup here, we're going for pretty much the basic setup, but we do have to keep in mind that weapon perk on there. We of course have the monolithic suppressor, the Archangel barrel, the commando foregrip, the 60 round mags, and of course fully loaded to maximize the AR ammo. If you wanted to use the Grav just straight up as a regular weapon, drop fully loaded, add on the tac laser, and you've got a go-to AR setup there. And then for the secondary, I go ahead, I rock the M19 because it's honestly a decent pistol by itself. It has a pretty solid TTK, a little bit more consistent than some of the other pistols. And frankly, the Psychov is just a bit too slow for my liking. And here I'm going for the monolithic suppressor, the super barrel, since we are just using the singular pistol, the lightweight trigger, the 32 round mags, and fully loaded yet again to maximize my pistol and my SMG ammo. That way, if I find a Tec-9 or an AK-74U or whatever else it might be on the ground or out of a chest, I'll have fully maxed out SMG ammo. I don't have to worry about that. Now, for my perks and equipment on my regain loadouts, it's a little bit different. I use double time tempered and amped. I'll usually switch to this as like a second loadout so I can get tempered if I already have my first and my perks are all set there. Or obviously off the regain, getting maxed out plates and having that bar filled and having that max health can be pretty beneficial. So tempered is super useful there. Double time and amped is more so personal preference. EOD is also great as well. Then I use the Semtex and the stuns on there too. For my second regain loadout, it's pretty much the same all around with the M19, the perks and the equipment and everything. But this is going to be my sniping setup. If it's a wide open zone or if it favors sniper engagements, I'll go ahead and rock the car here. We're going for a pretty standard setup of monolithic suppressor, 27.6 inch barrel, tac laser, sniper scope with the cross-thread reticle on there as well. And obviously I'm using fully loaded because without that, you only got 5 sniper shots. You got to be very accurate if you're planning to regain with just 5 shots in the bag. So we go ahead, run fully loaded, max out that ammo. If you're looking for just a regular car setup, again, drop fully loaded, add on the sport comb stock, and you got your basic sniper setup. But now moving into the actual main loadouts that I'm grabbing right away when we get our first loadout box. The following 8 setups here are what I'm going to be grabbing for those depending on how I'm feeling. First and foremost, the only thing that changes between the perks and equipment is I do use overkill because obviously you want those 2 primary weapons ASAP. So I always have that on that first loadout, and then I'll go ahead, I'll grab those tempered loadouts. Sometimes I'll swap out tempered for restock, whatever I'm feeling, but these are the main setups for perks and equipment that I'm usually grabbing right away. This first loadout consists of the AK from Cold War and the OTS. The OTS mags did see a slight nerf with the last season 6 update, but it's still one of the best SMGs in that 0 to 12 meter range, and anything beyond that, the AK has got you covered. Personally, I think the Cold War AK is the best gun in the game. It's easily the most versatile. You can build it for sniper support, you can build it for medium and long range. It's gonna fry in any and all situations. If you're able to land those shots, especially to the chest, neck, and head, this thing is almost unbeatable. It is an absolute melt machine. So these two complement each other very well. You got close range, you got long range, all covered. Great mobility on the OTS, pretty decent mobility on the AK. Pretty easy to use both these in my opinion. Like the patterns are pretty simple, so you can't go wrong with either of these. On the AK, we're going for the go-to long-range setup. Groove suppressor, RPK barrel for the best range, velocity, and control. I do also add the Spetsnaz grip on there for better control as well. I run with the standard 45 round mag. I don't feel like using 60 is all that necessary. It's going to slow you down a little bit too much. And frankly, 45 is totally sufficient. And then finally, I go for the 3x optic. And I'm always getting asked about this. I use the deep sea reticle on all my optics. You get this from the Dockside Killer bundle if it's available in your store. You don't need it, but I like using that personally. It's a nice like alternative to the blue dot. However, in the season 6 battle pass, there's also a blue dot reticle available in that, but this is my go-to reticle that I always see you guys asking about. It's called Deep Sea from the Dockside Killer bundle. And then on the OTS, I'm still rocking my basic setup from the previous seasons: Groove suppressor, Task Force, Tiger Team, VDV fast mag, then also the Serpent wrap. Having that faster ADS on the Serpent wrap does actually help out a bit because that fast mag ADS is going to be a little bit slower now. However, I have seen some people sort of altering between Groove Elastic, Serpent wrap, or even the skeletal stock on there as well and getting some better mobility out of that. Sort of comes down to preference. This setup still works for me. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, as they say, so I'm gonna keep rocking with this. Now, this next loadout is another one that I think is very consistent. It's the FARA and the PPSH. This is probably loadout number 2 for me in terms of overall efficiency, and especially when it comes to the rifles, I would say that 1 and 2 mark are the Cold War AK and the FARA back-to-back. I mean, this thing is relatively low recoil. It has a little bit of bounce compared to some weapons, but I personally don't think it's really all that difficult, especially when you're on, affected FOV on PC, 120 FOV. It's not too bad. Even on console, I don't think it's all that difficult compared to some of the other weapons we've got. And the FARA's overall TTK across range is actually pretty competitive. It's not what it used to be, but in this overall meta with this lower and slower TTK, it's still one of the best rifles, hands down. And the PPSH recently has risen in rank a lot. It's become a lot easier to use. You, of course, have that super large magazine, so it's kind of that backup option that you can just spray and pray with and wipe squads with and get multiple kills without having to worry about running out of ammo. So super efficient there. It's a Cold War weapon, so it's got great mobility. Just arguably one of the better SMGs in the game right now. Great for those close range fights. And obviously you got that FARA for medium and long range on there as well. When it comes to these attachments, pretty basic setup yet again, pretty much a copy and paste, as are most of the meta setups right now. Groove suppressor, RPK barrel, Spetsnaz grip. I do go for the 60 round mag here. I'd be lying if it said it wasn't partially for looks, because let's be honest, Dark Ether plus this blueprint just looks spicy as can be. But 60 rounds of this fire rate is also pretty solid. Then we got the 3x optic on there yet again. Then for the PPSH, it's just like the whole OTS setup with the one exception on the rear grip. Groove suppressor, Task Force, Tiger Team, a 71 round drum, which you absolutely love to see, spraying and praying for days. I don't use the rear grip here. Instead, I go for the Raider stock. And this is that core Cold War setup that you'll usually see on the vast majority of Cold War subs. Now, moving on, this next loadout is one that requires a little bit more patience, but I still think it's one of the better ones in the game. You got the C58 and one of my all-time favorite subs, the MAC-10. The C58 did see a recoil nerf with the Season 6 update, so it's going to be slightly harder to use. But really, it just comes down to learning the pattern. After you learn the pattern on any gun in the game, it's going to be a laser beam because you know exactly how it's going to work. You can make every weapon look like it has 0 recoil because of that. So C58, yeah, its recoil is not as good, but it's still one of the stronger rifles we have in the game. I really like it. I just love the way it feels. And the MAC-10 is just old reliable when it comes to Cold War weapons, right? It's one of the highest chosen weapons, one of the most popular weapons in the game for a reason. Its mobility is phenomenal, very minimal recoil, pretty good range for a sub as well. Like, it actually works for sniper support pretty well. It doesn't have the fastest TTK up close, but it's definitely, competitive for what it's worth, so you can't go wrong with this. Really fun setup in my opinion. C58 is going to be copy and paste pretty much. Agency, Task Force, Field Agent, 45 round drum over the 50 because I just think it's a little bit more snappy and I like that ADS speed. 3x optic yet again. Then for the MAC-10, old reliable, like I said, Agency, Task Force, Tiger Team, 53 round drum in the Raider stock. You could also build this thing out to be incredibly fast if you wanted to drop Agency, maybe add on something like the Reinforced Heavy instead, throw on something like the Patrol Grip or even the Bruiser Grip. You can fly and fry with this thing, but this is the more reliable setup in my opinion. After that, we've got our brand new weapons for Season 6, and for what it's worth, with every single seasonal update or every time we get new weapons like this and we do a top 10 loadouts video, I do always include the new weapons because obviously I know you guys want to see setups for them. It doesn't always mean they're the absolute best, but I wanted to give the best loadouts for these weapons, specifically with the Grav or the Galil and then also the Ironhide. I don't think either of these are like top tier meta, but they're new, so obviously I want to feature them in this video. There are some better alternatives out there though. The Grav is just a mid-tier rifle. I would expect it to get buffed at some point in the future, but as it stands right now, it's really nothing too crazy. It's solid, it's competitive, it's viable, but it's not top of the, food chain here. And shotguns just really aren't a meta. Too many SMGs are more reliable with better mobility. These are a little bit too unforgiving in my opinion, but it does work in certain situations. Like for Rebirth, this could be really solid. It does require pretty, good accuracy when it comes down to it because it does have that slower fire rate as a lever action. But the Grav, to no one's surprise, is going to be the same AR setup as always. Agency, Task Force, Field Agent, 50, and the 3x optic. This does have a decent amount of recoil though. Even with all these pro recoil attachments, Agency, Task Force, Field Agent, it's not super easy to use over range. Like this really is a medium range weapon as it stands. And then for the Ironhide for the shoddy, this is sort of the go-to Cold War shotgun setup. Agency choke, because obviously that's going to keep you off the minimap and also extend that range a little bit. We're using the reinforced heavy barrel to increase that fire rate so you can fire off more shots quicker. That's huge with this shotgun. Obviously, it is a shot of your hip firing a lot, so the 5mm laser is pretty crucial. The 8-round mag, so you don't have to reload as often. Then also no stock for some better mobility out of that. That's pretty much the go-to shoddy setup as mentioned for Cold War weapons. Then we get to the TTK monster loadout, I would call it. MG82 and the MP5. MG82 got a nerf with the whole Season 6 update to its recoil. I'm gonna keep it a buck. It's not hard to use. It doesn't feel all that different from before. Like it is still very easy to learn that pattern and counter it, especially if you can mount. It is just a laser beam. That TTK over range is no joke. It is one of the best in the game, especially if you're able to land headshots, neck shots, chest shots. It's going to delete everyone. And the MP5 has one of the best TTKs up close from 0 to about 10 meters. So you got every range covered here with two of the fastest killing weapons in the game. For the setup here, Agency and Task Force is a go-to. Match grade also works, but you are going to get a little bit more control out of Task Force now, so I do opt for that instead of match grade, even though it's going to be a little bit slower. I also go for the Field Agent, pretty necessary here, 3x yet again. And then for the last attachment, you can go for the Raider stock. Personally, I like that, faster ADS speed, a little bit of better sprint to fire. You could also go for something like the Serpent or the Airborne Elastic Wrap and get that ADS a little bit faster. Or you could go for something like the 125 round or the Fast Mag, because reloading with LMGs is not fun, so those sort of help out there. You can definitely mess around with that last attachment though. Then MP5 is same old, monolithic integral, Merc foregrip, 45 round mags, sleight of hand, and then also the collapsible stock. Moving on from that, we've got sort of my experimental loadout. This is the QBZ and the Tec-9. The QBZ is sort of that favored rifle from Raven for medium and long range fights. Its recoil, not all that bad, but it's got pretty solid damage over range. Very competitive TCK in general and pretty easy to use. And the Tec-9 is a little bit tricky because it does have some more recoil up close, but it can fry. It's a pretty solid SMG, so I don't run this on every single loadout, but it is a weapon that when I do have it, it's pretty fun to use and it gets the job done, right? So no surprise here on the QBZ. Same as always, Agency, Task Force, Field Agent, 45 round drum. You could even go for the 60 here if you wanted to, but it's going to be a little bit slower. Then also the 3x yet again. And then on the Tec-9, I go for the fully auto repeater here. I like that fully auto aspect there. It just makes the gun easier to use. I don't have to worry about the burst or the single shot by default, which just raises the skill gap with it for no real reason. So fully auto repeater, I feel like is the way to go. I go for the reinforced heavy here because Task Force with that increased recoil just doesn't feel like it doesn't hit like it should. So reinforced heavy, I feel like gets the job done. I go for Tiger Team as always for that better mobility, the 48 round mag because that fire rate is pretty fast, and Raider stock as always. Now loadout number 9, again sort of an experimental loadout. We got the XM4 and the Bullfrog. Both solid weapons. I mean, for a primary, even for sniper support, the XM4 works very well. It does have a little bit more recoil than it has had in the past. It didn't change with Season 6, but for the last couple of weeks, it hasn't been, that great long-range weapon, but it can hold its own. And the Bullfrog is just one of those more consistent SMGs. Can't go wrong with it. It's right in the middle of the packet in terms of the overall SMG meta. So both very consistent and competitive weapons. For the setup here on the XM4, I don't go for an underbarrel on this one actually, just because I don't think the recoil is all that bad, specifically for like medium range fights. I go for Agency and Task Force. I feel like I get enough control out of those. 60 round mag or 45, you could go either or. 3x optic, and then I do also go for the Raider pad stock to get some better mobility. And then on the Bullfrog, we don't need to use that magazine here because this has 50 rounds by default, and that's plenty for a sub. Instead, I'm going for GRU, Task Force, Tiger Team, the Serpent Rat for a better ADS, then also the Skeletal stock, aka the Raider stock. You could even drop, say, the Serpent Rat here and add on the Bruiser if you just really wanted to fly, get some insane mobility. Sort of up to you, but I like this setup. It feels snappy, it feels quick, and it's very consistent. And then finally, loadout number 10 is going to be my main sniper setup. This is the Swiss and the AK built for sniper support and for close range fights. The Swiss setup here is pretty standard. GRU suppressor and combat recon is going to give you that best range and velocity possible. 5mm laser obviously acts as a tack laser for Cold War snipers. I go for the bruiser grip and get some better stability and also movement speed. Then I also go for the serpent wrap or airborne elastic wrap, either or, and you'll get a better ADS time, so it's a bit more snappy. You could also swap this out with the car setup from earlier as well, with the sport comb stock on there. Whatever sniper floats your boat, right? And then for the AK for close range, we go for the regular suppressor. GRU is not needed here because we're only focusing on like 0 to 20 meter fights most of the time. I go for Tiger Team to get some better mobility. Spetsnaz to help control it where I need it. No barrel here because you don't need it. 45 round mag, then also the Microflex LED. You don't want to use 3 times because that's just awkward for close range. You could try the iron sights, but I feel like it's just the most consistent with that red dot on there because everyone's comfortable and familiar with that. So great for those close range fights, and obviously you got the Swiss to manage all that long range in the sniping fights. So yeah, in my opinion, those are the top 10 best loadouts to be using here in Season 6. Honestly, the meta is pretty solid right now. It's pretty open, it's pretty diverse. You can use a lot of different weapons. Even some unmentioned MW weapons are pretty solid right now. The AMAX, the M4, the RAM, those are all great. The MP7's up there as well. The PKM, the Bruin. A lot of really solid weapons right now, but those are the setups that I think are the best. Hopefully this video helped you guys out. If it did, let me know by dropping a like on it. It would be seriously appreciated. And of course, if you're new to the channel or if you haven't subscribed yet, feel free to do so, as I am always covering everything going on in COD, so you can always find everything right here on the channel. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I will catch you guys later. Peace out.